Hey guys, I'm back. Today you're in for a treat. Not long ago, I discovered some videotapes in the filing cabinet. Curious, I had the material digitized. When I saw what was on the tapes, I was like, oh my God, how did I forget about this? I went through every minute of it like 20 times, and I said I'm going to use it someday. So many of you already saw the picture car warehouse where we put the cars together back for the first movie. We've got to remember, back at that time we were working with a small budget, so we used Eddie Paul's 10,000 square foot warehouse. Eddie and his team of fabricators and craftsmen were tasked with installing the parts that we chose and acquired. These guys worked their butts off every day. It made my role look very, very easy. My role, again, was a technical advisor, was to recommend which cars we should use for the movie, what colors we should paint them, what kind of parts they should put on the car, and all that kind of stuff. But once the production accepted a certain year, make, and model for a character, it was then my job to find and recommend the parts that we would install on the cars. I'd have to get approval, but usually they let me do what I wanted to do. For the first movie though, Universal did not have the money to just go buy a car like a Super and build it from scratch, and we didn't have the time anyway. Instead, they rented the cars from the people who had already modified their tuner cars. People like John Lapid. You remember John, he owned the Eclipse. It was silver when he had the car, and they accepted that car. So instead of building that car from scratch, all we're gonna do is splash some green paint on the car and then find some affordable wheels, put a nitrous system in the back of the car and a few other items, and then replicate his car for the stunt cars, Hero 2 and all that kind of stuff. That story is coming up right after the break. Did you know that the average driver gets 9 traffic tickets in their lifetime? Look, I'll be the first to admit that I've taken maybe a couple of liberties with traffic laws back in the day. And of course, when I got caught, I had to go to court to fight the ticket, which was always a hassle. And each time that I lost my case, it meant big fines, points on my record, and higher insurance premiums. Eventually, I realized that nothing beats having a good attorney argue your case in court. So here's what you do. You download the Off the Record app to your phone and register for an account. And if you get a ticket, simply upload a photo of your ticket into the app and you will be quickly matched with a lawyer in your jurisdiction. Your lawyer will start working your case right away, and in most cases, you'll never have to set foot in a courtroom. Off the Record has a 97% success rate and a 4.9 star rating on Google. And guess what? They even offer a money-back guarantee if they aren't able to reduce the points or keep that ticket fully off your record. Best of all, I've arranged a 10% discount for all of my YouTube viewers, so download the app and register using the referral code FASTLIFE to receive 10% off your first case. For each car we cast, we had to build 3 to 8 replicas, backup cars. So basically it goes like this. When we cast R.J. DeVere's S2000 for Johnny Tran's car for the first movie, we only needed 1 backup car because there were no real complex stunt sequence. It was just race wars and really nothing else. Because of that fact, the car survived the movie largely intact. 2 years later, Universal started production of Too Fast and Furious. And rather than buy all new cars, they went to the warehouse and say, Craig, look at the cars, see if we can reuse them. So many of the surviving cars from the first movie would be reimagined using new colors, new body kits, wheels, and so forth. And as you can see here, you can see the team is working on the S2000. By this time, RJ had installed a supercharger and different wheels on his car because there's going to be complex stunts. We had to buy 3 of those. Next to the S2000 right here, you can see a stack of audio and video components. Usually you never put working audio and video systems, but in this movie, John Singleton, the director, wanted to see the lights inside the cars with the stereo stuff. That was very big and popular then. A little to the left, you can see 4 Toyota MRSs. Am I saying that right? Those cars were going to be assigned to one of the goons during the barrel race sequence, if you remember that. They ended up, however, using a Camaro and a Dodge Challenger, and so the MRSs were only used for the warehouse scramble scene. We had 4 of them. I painted them 4 different colors. See if you can spot them in the scene. Next, we see the Afro Jack Supra. Now these Supras were the surviving Supras from the first movie. You can tell that by the wheels and the steering wheel, probably. But you can see that we stuffed this car with a ton of audio, video, and equipment. Part of my job was to design the audio video layouts. West Coast Customs made them functional, but our amazing group of mechanics installed almost all of it. So once we were done with the interiors of the cars went over to Deep Elegance and El Segundo. Here we see the Evos getting reconditioned. These Evos were Evo 7s that Mitsubishi diverted from an Austrian rally team. We had 4 of them, like I said. Since the Evo 7s would never be sold in the United States, Mitsubishi asked us to make the cars look like Evo 8s. We had to reshape the rear tail light area, but since Mitsubishi didn't have the Evo 8 tail lights, we relied on an aftermarket company called Genera TYC. That's what all that surgery was about. Time was growing short, so it was time to pack up the cars and send them off to Miami. So I moved over there for 4 months to work on the movie. And when I arrived in Miami, the new picture car warehouse was 4 times bigger than Eddie Paul's warehouse, and we were just getting started. We had already pulled all the leftover cars from the first movie and delivered them to the Miami facility, minus a few. So I had to hustle in order to make the old reused cars look different from the first movie cars. For example, I took the leftover Eclipses and changed their body kits, wheels, and paint and colors. Same with the surviving High Civics, the RX-7s. Again, the goal was to make these cars look totally different for this movie, and we had the budget to do it. However, everybody remembers there were several new characters in Too Fast, Too Furious. There were several goons who would need cars. The cars chosen were Dodge Vipers, an E36 BMW wide body, a C5 Corvette, a 69 Camaro, a 70 Dodge Challenger, and a Saline Mustang. Not a real one, but a Fit V6. Ludacris played Tej, and he too would need a car, so for him I recommended an Acura NSX. My idea was to paint that car top secret gold and create a roof scoop inspired from racing and install a big race-inspired wing. But unfortunately, Eddie Paul had another idea. Instead of the race-inspired roof scoop, Eddie concocted a scalloped tunnel rather than a proper duct. Eddie was genius, but he didn't know much about the trends in the tuner market, and this was one of the reasons that they hired me, because back then all the picture car builders in Hollywood only built muscle cars. They know nothing about tuner cars, nothing. And so every day the truckload of parts kept arriving to the warehouse, and you can see the mechanics, they look around, oh Jesus, what are we putting on these cars now? They were not happy about any of that. So the picture car warehouse was the place to organize everything to do with the cars in the movie. The stunt team and the special effects created this diorama to help us work out how to run a Saline Mustang under a truck without killing the driver. The ramps were built there, flamethrower exhausts were all built there. And a few weeks later, the last of the GTRs that we ordered for Motorworks finally arrived. My GTR served as Hero 1, you know that, but we had purchased 4 more GTRs and a 5th one for the stunt car from Andy at Middlehurst in England. Stunt cars, like I said, don't really need working audio and video, so basically we were installing a body kit, a wing, and wheels, and a nitrous spray bar for the intercooler. And inside we installed the proper Sparco seat, HKS gauges, a roll bar to match my car, harnesses, and a Sparco steering wheel, and some interior neon, and of course the elaborate bottle setup where the passenger seat used to reside. All the other cars that we built had to replicate my cars. So now here you can see the parts room. Everything was inventoried and barcoded. When we were done, it was 4 stories high and had about $350,000 worth of parts, not including tires. As the cars came together, the last step was to check the brakes, change all the fluids, do safety checks, double check for neglected plate maintenance like spark plugs, timing belts, timing change, all that kind of stuff. But sometimes, even when we finished building a car, they would change everything. Example, the Toyota MRS wide bodies that we built were no longer going to be used by the goons in the barrel race. Instead, they used the Camaro and the Challenger. Those were cast aside because as convertibles, you would see that the actor wasn't driving it. It would be a stunt driver driving the car. Eddie Paul finally delivered the Eclipse Spiders about this time. Those cars were built for Tyrese, who plays Roman Pierce. There were 2 problems. One was the yellow suede interior, which we paid $40,000 for 4 cars to get that. And the fact that Tyrese hated the car.
He didn't like the stupid spider graphics on the side of the car. That's number one. Number two, he didn't like the fact that the car was purple on the outside and yellow on the inside. And he said, and I quote, "Oh, hell no. I ain't driving no Lakers car." The Lakers, for the people who don't know, is a popular Los Angeles basketball team in California. By this time though, the Evos had arrived from California, mostly done. We weren't finished with the Evo. It still needed its gauges, its wheels, a wing, and graphics. They couldn't come up with graphics for months. And shortly after that, the last R34 GTR started to arrive, along with the High Civics and the leftover 240 SXs. And our inventory room was filling up fast. The R34s were real GTRs, as I've mentioned many times. But we could have built GTTs, but we just didn't have that time. We just didn't have the time. So it was faster and cheaper to do it this way. And again, just like the first movie, part of my responsibility to find the parts to install these cars, I tried to spread the love by using multiple companies to help us get the parts. In the first movie, I mostly focused on Greddy because I had a relationship with them. Then I branched out to HKS, It's Only Fair, and then to Apex Integration. For Nitrous, I went to Nitrous Express. For seats, steering wheels, shift knobs, pedals, I still use some Sparco, but we added Momo. I was able to count on these companies for two reasons. Most of the companies contributed for the first movie, and those who provided us parts made millions on their parts after the Fast and Furious movie. Nitrous oxide systems, as an example, their sales went up 1,500%. Even today, replica builders are still seeking out the parts that we used in the movies. And back in late of August of 2002, as the cars were coming together and the filming had begun, so I was almost done with everything. But one of the scenes, called the Warehouse Scramble, required as many as 300 vehicles. And to find these cars, we decided to call a casting call before the school year started. The thought being that many of these people who would own such cars like this would be back in school, and then that would limit our choices. So what we did is we spread the word among local car clubs that we were going to have a gathering at Homestead Raceway south of Miami. To our surprise, with very little notice, more than 700 cars showed up. Out of those, we signed up about 300 cars, along with pretty girls as set decoration. You know what I'm talking about? Yes, yeah. With that done, we focused on the remaining cars. Mainly the R34 GTRs, the Suzuki S2000, those are the main cars, and Evos to some extent. And here you can see the stunt team is preparing the S2000 for the bridge jump. The tests were mostly successful. The remote control was very complicated, but it performed as designed. After we wrapped up the testing, I was called inside to examine the cars for the audition race, which was going to happen in a couple of days. What was funny is everybody said that the Mustang was going to win, but I said no way that Vipers would win. The Vipers would have smoked every other car that we had there in the inventory, so especially the BMWs, which was a 323 4-cylinder with big 20-inch chrome wheels. Wasn't my idea. Walking around the warehouse, you would never know what you're going to see. When I was walking over this table over here, I came across this fabricator. He was creating a transparent brake rotor. He was trying to make it so that the team could make the brake look like it was superheater like race cars. I showed them option videos and they wanted to replicate that, but unfortunately we couldn't use that because you can only put it on one side, and if you slam on the brake, the car is going to pull to the left, and it wasn't safe, so they cut it out and they didn't use it. And again, part of my role was to make sure that all the sponsors got their logos on the cars that they sponsored, because they paid to be there. The few times I was on set, I got to see some of the stunts, like the bridge jump scenes, like with the S2000 and the Supra and the Skyline. And after every stunt, I'd go back to the warehouse on the next morning and I look at the cars. On some of them, it looks like they're totaled. Wheels are destroyed. Stuff comes off the car. Body kit's wrecked. Wing fills all off the cars, all that kind of stuff. So it was sad. You get all the work done. There's with the guys, they're working their butts out. The cars go out nice and shiny and clean. Next morning, they're total, basically. As before, in my first experience with working with the production team, this production team was very, very kind and treated me very nicely. But I think some of the mechanics were not happy about installing stereos in stunt cars. Why are we doing this? Not my choice, bro. I'm an advisor. I gotta give it out to a lot of guys. The guys from Modern Image in particular, and Pierre Hoff from Auto Indulgent. All those guys worked their asses off, left their houses and your families for 2 months to be out there doing all that kind of stuff. So as an outsider, it was an amazing experience. I hope you liked the footage. Feel free to go slow motion and take a look at everything that's going on in the background. And if you have questions, just DM me on my Instagram. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe. It helps with the algorithm and it helps me to get my sponsors and all that kind of thing. Thanks for watching again. We'll see you next week.